The impossible miracle, the woman who defied death in a crash no one should have survived. It was a cold winter night when firefighters arrived at the scene and couldn't believe what they were seeing. The car was completely destroyed, twisted like crumpled paper, and the impact had been so violent that pieces of metal were scattered over more than 50 yards across the highway. The smell of burnt rubber and spilled gasoline filled the air. The red and blue lights from the sirens illuminated the scene like flashes from a nightmare. One of the firefighters, a veteran with over 20 years of service, looked at the wreckage and whispered to his colleague beside him, "Nobody walks away from this alive." But they were wrong. Because there, walking among the debris with trembling steps, was her. A woman. Alive. Breathing. Walking. And what happened that night would challenge everything that science and medicine knew about the limits of the human body. Sarah Mitchell was 32 years old and was heading home after a long day at work. She was a nurse at a hospital in the neighboring town and was used to seeing tragedies, dealing with the fragility of life every day. But she never imagined she would become the protagonist of a story that would leave doctors without explanation. The road was wet, dense fog covered the lane, and Sarah was driving carefully, respecting the speed limit. Everything seemed normal until, on a sharp curve, the headlights of a truck appeared out of nowhere, coming in the wrong lane, out of control, sliding on the wet pavement like an uncontrolled steel monster. The impact was devastating. The sound of tearing metal echoed through the silent night like a cry of pain. Sarah's car, a compact sedan, was hit head-on by the truck that weighed more than 15 tons. The physics of the accident was brutal, the difference in mass, the combined speed of both vehicles, the force of impact. Everything pointed to a single conclusion. Instant death. Sarah's car spun in the air like a toy, rolled 3 times, slid across the lane and finally stopped upside down in a ditch beside the road. The roof was completely crushed, the doors ripped off, the windshield shattered into thousands of pieces. Witnesses passing by immediately called emergency services, but everyone was certain it would only be to retrieve a body. When the first responders arrived, 6 minutes after the accident, they mentally prepared for the worst. Accidents with this magnitude of destruction rarely left survivors. The team commander, Eduardo Santos, an experienced man who had attended hundreds of serious accidents, got out of the vehicle and began to assess the scene. The truck had stopped further ahead, the driver was injured but conscious. But Sarah's car looked like a crushed soda can. Eduardo and his team ran toward the wreckage, carrying heavy rescue equipment, prepared to cut through the metal and try, against all odds, to find someone alive. That's when the impossible happened. A silhouette moved through the smoke and dust. Someone was getting out of the car. Walking. The firefighters stopped, frozen, thinking they were seeing a hallucination. But it wasn't. Sarah Mitchell was standing, leaning on a piece of twisted metal, with blood running down her face, her clothes torn, but alive. Completely alive. She looked at the firefighters with confused, disoriented eyes and murmured, "What happened? Where am I?" Eduardo ran to her, not believing what he was seeing. He grabbed Sarah by the arm, afraid she would collapse at any moment, and began to do a quick assessment. Accelerated pulse, but present. Gasping breathing, but functioning. Some cuts on her face and arms, but nothing that seemed fatal. How was this possible? The medical team arrived minutes later and Sarah was immediately placed on a stretcher and taken to the hospital. During the journey, the paramedics remained incredulous. They had seen photos of the accident. They knew the speed of impact. They knew the statistics. In accidents with that magnitude of destruction, the survival rate was practically zero. And when there were survivors, they always arrived at the hospital with very serious injuries, severe head trauma, internal bleeding, multiple fractures, perforated organs. But Sarah was conscious, talking, moving. It was a medical miracle. Or was it something more? At the hospital, Sarah underwent a complete battery of tests. CT scans, X-rays, MRI, blood tests. Doctors expected to find devastating internal damage. But what they discovered left the entire medical team in absolute shock. Sarah had only 3 fractured ribs, a deep cut on her forehead that needed stitches, some bruises on her arms and legs, and mild head trauma. Nothing more. No internal bleeding. No perforated organs. No spinal injury. No permanent brain damage. The doctor who analyzed the tests, Dr. Roberto Almeida, a trauma surgeon with 30 years of experience, was speechless. He looked at the results, then at the photos of the accident, and then again at Sarah, who was sitting on the hospital gurney, drinking water and talking with a nurse. "This doesn't make sense," Dr. Roberto murmured to the team. "I saw the car. I saw the photos. The driver's cabin was completely crushed. The force of impact should have caused catastrophic injuries. But she's here, practically unharmed. It's as if something protected her at the exact moment of impact." The medical team began to investigate. Was it the seatbelt? Sarah confirmed she was wearing the belt, but in accidents of that magnitude, the belt alone wouldn't be enough. The airbags then? Yes, the airbags had been deployed, but witnesses stated that the car rolled violently, and in rollovers, airbags offer limited protection. There was something more. Something that science still couldn't fully explain. Traffic accident investigators arrived at the scene the next day to analyze the wreckage. They measured the brake marks, calculated the speed of impact, analyzed the trajectory of both vehicles. The conclusions were frightening. The combined speed of the 2 vehicles at the moment of impact was approximately 87 miles per hour. The force generated was equivalent to dropping the car from a height of 98 feet. No human being should survive that. But Sarah survived. And the explanation was hidden in an almost imperceptible detail in the wreckage. When investigators carefully analyzed the final position of the car, they discovered something extraordinary. At the exact moment of the rollover, the car had collided with a young tree in the ditch. This tree, with a flexible but resistant trunk, had absorbed part of the kinetic energy of the impact, functioning as a kind of natural shock absorber. In addition, the exact sequence of rollovers had created a deformation pattern in the car that, by pure luck, preserved a small space around the driver's seat. It was as if the metal had bent to create a protective bubble around Sarah. The chances of this happening were 1 in a million. It was statistically almost impossible. But it happened. Sarah spent 3 days in the hospital under observation. During this time, she received visits from people she didn't know. Firefighters who had attended the scene came to see her, still incredulous. Doctors from other hospitals asked to examine her case. Journalists wanted to interview the woman who defied death. But Sarah was confused, traumatized, trying to process what had happened. She didn't feel like a hero or a miracle. She felt lucky. Absurd, improbable luck, but luck. In the first nights at the hospital, Sarah couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the truck's headlights emerging from the fog, felt the violent impact, heard the sound of tearing metal. The psychological trauma was deep, even though her body had come out relatively unscathed. On the 3rd day, a psychologist came to talk to Sarah. She explained that what Sarah was feeling was completely normal. That surviving such a serious accident often leaves deeper emotional scars than physical ones. That the brain would need time to process the trauma, to accept that she had really survived the impossible. The psychologist also mentioned something interesting. She said there were documented cases of people who survived statistically impossible accidents, and that many of them reported feeling, at the moment of impact, a strange sense of calm, as if time had slowed down, as if something or someone was protecting them. Sarah remained silent for a long moment. Then she confessed something she hadn't told anyone. At the moment of impact, Sarah said in a trembling voice, "I saw the truck's headlights coming toward me and knew I was going to die." There was absolute certainty. But then, in the last second, I felt a force pushing me to the side, as if invisible hands were holding me and moving me a few inches. I thought it was my imagination, the brain creating illusions in the last moments of life. But now, knowing that I survived because of that small space that formed around me, I wonder if it wasn't something more. If there wasn't an intervention that science can't measure. The psychologist smiled gently and said that each survivor interprets their experience uniquely, and that there were no right or wrong answers. Sarah was discharged from the hospital a week later. She returned home, but didn't return to the road for months. The trauma was too deep. She started intensive therapy, participated in support groups for accident survivors, and gradually rebuilt her life. Her car was considered a total loss, obviously. When Sarah finally had the courage to visit the junkyard where the wreckage was stored, she was paralyzed. Seeing what was left of the car, the doors ripped off, the roof completely crushed, the steering wheel bent inward, was terrifying. How had she gotten out of there alive? How had her body fit in that small preserved space? It was incomprehensible. She touched the twisted metal and felt a chill run down her spine. She was looking at her own tomb. But by some miracle, she wasn't inside it. Sarah's story spread. Local newspapers published articles. Television programs asked for interviews. She became a symbol of hope, of resilience, that sometimes, against all odds, life finds a way to persist. But Sarah didn't want to be a symbol. She just wanted to understand. She wanted to know why she survived when so many others, in less serious accidents, didn't have the same luck. Was it destiny? Luck? Divine intervention? Or simply physics and probability aligning extraordinarily at a crucial moment? Today, 5 years after the accident, Sarah has returned to driving. But never in the same way. She drives slowly, with redoubled attention, respecting every sign, every curve, every weather condition. She carries with her the visceral awareness of the fragility of life, of how everything can change in a split second. But she also carries a deep gratitude for being alive, for being able to breathe, feel, love, exist. She became a motivational speaker, telling her story in schools and companies, emphasizing the importance of traffic safety, wearing seatbelts, paying attention while driving. Because she knows, better than anyone, that a second of carelessness can be the difference between life and death. Sarah's message is simple but powerful: life is fragile, but also incredibly resilient. Each day is a gift. Each breath is a miracle. And sometimes, when all seems lost, when death seems certain, something extraordinary happens. Something that science can't fully explain, but that reminds us that there are still mysteries in the universe, there is still hope even in the most desperate situations. Sarah Mitchell walked away from an accident that firefighters, doctors, and investigators called impossible to survive. And her story continues to inspire thousands of people around the world, proving that sometimes, against all odds, miracles really do happen.